Greetings, this is Daphne Garrido. Welcome to Of Darkness and Light. I want to talk about boundary setting, and the modern ideals of pushing people away and expecting them to get help if they get sick because your boundaries have made them depressed and lose their mind. I was in a situation once where I fell deeply in love with someone who had wanted me to not do that, but we were being very close, and that's how my heart works. It fell in love with them over the period of 8 months, 7 months, and by the end of that time, I had to communicate with them how I felt, and I never got to see them again, and all they told me was that they wanted space. And then I was communicating as best I could, trying to respect their boundary for space, about how I was depressed and how I was alone and how I missed them most. And all I ever heard from them was about how I needed to respect their need for space. And the more depressed I got, the more it became about how I wasn't respecting their need for space. And then when they said goodbye, it was to tell me that because I fell for them and explained it to them, I had tainted all of the memories of our friendship that were most precious to me, and that they misremembered them all as me being a manipulative abuser. And so I could just they didn't want to be my friend anymore. And so I could just go ahead and live with that. And so I walked forward not doing very well. And then they reached out about exchanging stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, I might get to see him again. I was so excited, but I didn't want to be needy, because it seemed like they needed me to be somebody who was cool. And so I was just like, yeah, cool. I didn't express my need until days later when I was driving home, and I just was like, oh my gosh, I miss them so much and they're not responding. I need to tell them. And so I said that I miss them a lot. And then I heard nothing. And then I delivered some of their books and a letter to their place of work, despite it being one of the scariest things I ever did, to walk into their place. And I was so happy that they weren't there, because I didn't want to break their boundary, but I thought that letter I was delivering was going to bring a friend back. And they never responded, and I got sick, I got abused, and I got really, really delusional and schizophrenic, and I sent a sad message about how I felt them in my heart, and how I thought they had seen my meditation, and how they thought they might have seen me on the street when I was going on a date in Seattle. I thought they might saw my Tinder profile. It was just this whole spiel of, hey, I'm not realizing I'm schizophrenic yet, and I'm assuming everything I feel in my heart is you because I've been thinking about you all the time. And they just told me to get help. They told me none of that happened. They told me get help. And then I said, I'm really, really sorry. That's one of the saddest things that's ever happened to me. And there was no compassion coming back. And then I reached out again in a high peak delusional state after I got better briefly, and then I got way worse, and then my dementia and mania took over for a couple of weeks while I was still living in a home with the person who abused me, and until I just reached out in the most absurd way, rolled up to after weeks of delusion of believing again I could feel them, seeing the stuff I was doing on the internet, and presuming reactions that I felt them having meant things, and literally thinking I was having this really long one-way conversation via a Spotify playlist that I kept retitling and adding new songs to, and then feeling myself feel them in, which didn't happen at all. So I said something that was more insane you could ever imagine, and then they just told me never to talk to him again, and tried to scare me away being mean and just saying they were angry. And I was sitting there highly schizophrenic, coming out of delusion, losing my mind. It took me another week to accept that I needed to go into a crisis center, and then my whole life fell apart. Then I went on antipsychotics. Then I came off them. Then I started writing for my heart. Then I reached out to them like another 5 months later, and was just like, hey, I need to leave an open door for us to have a conversation someday. But again, I was trying to be really respectful to their boundaries and just make it like hey, I'd really like to, because I assumed nobody could see a sweet message like that and not be like, of course, one day. But then they just said blocked. That was when they said blocked. And I've talked about this a lot. But it's basically, I'm a schizophrenic person, and I have an insanity. I have a psychosis that is about my communications with other people, and it comes from this one person who then, after they blocked me, months went by, and I started going nuts, and I started messaging them again, and they just compiled everything I messaged. They never responded after they said blocked, and then they compiled it all and gave it to a lawyer and took me to court, which every part of this process has locked down my executive dysfunction more and more and more, because I'm a schizophrenic woman who hasn't been getting help. And despite the fact that I reached out really crazy and I can't really blame them, because I never once told them what was going on straight, they obviously have made a point to live their life never speaking to me again and making me pay for wanting to have to speak to them. It's just like they think it's a cool, mean thing to do, to be like, hey, yeah, no, I said no, I'm never going to talk to you again. You got to figure it out. People have to figure it out when they get told they're never going to get talked to again. So grow the fuck up. And it's like, dude, I think the grow the fuck up goes the other way around for this person, because I'm a schizophrenic woman, and what happens in schizophrenic people happens in other people. I just have to heal it, or it projects into my psyche all the time. And that's what's going on, is people hold these boundaries that are completely unfair against people, and they do them for cruel reasons. And then they think themselves right. They think themselves doing something justified, because psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, they all preach boundaries over hugs, dude. Like, if somebody's really sad and they need to talk, but you don't want to, your therapist is going to tell you to respect that. Not maybe you should give that person a conversation so they don't lose their mind wondering why the person they cared about most never cared once about the fact that they've been so depressed. And that's what happened to me. I cared about somebody the most, and they left me in a pit of depression, and it led me to lose my mind via schizophrenia. And I've been caught in a kind of reverse Benjamin Button, because they literally refuse to ever respond to me, ever. And then they put a restraining order on me, and it doesn't change the need that I have as a human being that has schizophrenia, that has one heartfelt trauma that radiates into everything I write and do and think, and makes me sad every morning I wake up, and makes me really terribly, terribly depressed, that this person who I still care about, after ruining my mind in this torture it's unbecoming over years by making a point of never speaking to me, will still not speak to me. They will still not give me a few words to help me find ease. And that's why schizophrenic people are the most genocided people in the history of the fucking world, because this has been going on for all of Western civilization. Schizophrenic people are problematized and then treated poorly, and then the people who abuse them into schizophrenia send them away. And it is abuse. This person never meant to abuse me. Out of all the people that I had relationship with as a trans woman, they're the one good person. But there's a gap of understanding here, and there's a gap of what society has trained people to do through the idealization of boundaries. And I'm not saying boundaries are not healthy. I'm not saying that people don't deserve to process on their own when that's how they work. I'm saying there are two sides of a coin, and we have a bunch of people who are traumatized to be kind of dependent, and we have a bunch of people who are traumatized to be avoidant, and the avoidant people are convinced they're being healthy. The balance is in the middle, and dependent people are being completely sacrificed, and it turns people to spiritual psychosis, to mental breakdowns, to complete loneliness, to isolation because all the others they try and meet can tell that they are still stuck in some depression. There is a story I wrote that is my favorite called The Princess Was in That Castle. And it doesn't mean this person's princess was me in a castle. It means that's the psychosis that women and men and people who love like me, who are taken by others that are over absorbed in the idealization of boundaries as told by psychologists, will ruin into depression and bipolar disorder and schizophrenia and a life of the saddest psychosis, wondering when and if this one person will ever talk to them again, and they'll walk around thinking, that person's such a loser. And when you do that to a schizophrenic person, it literally ruins their life. And I've been trying to communicate that, and that's what is going into court documents. And now I'm being dangerous again because no one else will help me. So I'm reaching out to that person, hoping that since I'm not doing it with any delusion, and every single email I send through is one that I would dare them to submit to the court, simply asking that they take down the restraining order that makes everyone I ask for help refuse me because they see me as an insane trans woman who has been labeled as such by the state. And so how on earth could a humanitarian organization care about somebody who's clearly dysfunctional and dangerous? Because there's no way that the boundary police youngsters who are misunderstanding their responsibility to humanity, to be human, are actually like abusing people and then emotionally, and then using the systems of old to punish in ways that make their victims seem like perpetrators. And that's where my executive dysfunction comes from the most, is I continue to wake up day after day and not hear messages from other people that I can have some life where I might be led towards being taken care of, where someone can find a helper for me to move towards getting qualified for disability. And it's just like, hey, people of Washington State are all obsessed with the Seahawks. Seahawk time, dude. Figure it out. We'll help. We don't care. We're watching football, dude. And then liberal people is like, hey, dude, haven't you heard the news? There was an ICE killing. That's what every liberal person has to care about right now, or we're not good people. We have to make soapboxy posts about it. We have to talk to all of our friends about it. We have to have arguments in our head about it. We have to read every news article about it. We're not actually helping, but we can't help you because your situation's not important, because there was a single man who is already dead who needs my attention. Anyways, I hope you have a good day. I'm going to try and write more of Last Rites of Empire, but I would very much appreciate kind messages from people and or from that person if they listen, because I've been trying to get them to listen, because why the fuck not? So anyways, check out my podcast. It's on Apple and Spotify, and if you're listening there, please go to daphnegarrido.com and look at my content. I have a new chapter pinned up high called Last Rites of Empire, and it is a book I'm going to be writing straight through and will be the next book I finish, no matter what, because I have found my space to thrive, and it is named Gloria. So please read, please continue to support me. I'm going to put my GoFundMe up top. I'm going to put a couple links in this video, and I just wanted to say I appreciate you all, and I forgive you for not understanding this, but hey, if you understand now, you understand now, so it's time to start doing right, okay?